Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Matthews, it's been a long time since I've seen you.
Yes, long time since I've seen you. You're looking good.
Thank you. You are too.
Thank
you weren't here the last board meeting. So as I told Mr. Weatherspoon, I was actually going to run against him in his district. So looks like now he's forced to want you to be in my district. And as you know, I'm from the Dunn, Irwin, Coates area just like you are. So it's going to be a wonderful race. But with that being said, we're talking thousands of people that dislike the asphalt plant. Over 1,000 have signed a petition. Not only signed a petition, but, being from the Dunn, Irwin area, grew up in Irwin and Dunn, I go to a lot of restaurants. You would be amazed at the people that have stopped me since I told them I was running for county commissioner and said, you know what? We got corruption going on. You know what? We got folks that need to change. So not only that, but are we really looking at the growth? Because that's the one thing that folks in this county say. All you're looking at is the growth of neighborhoods. Is anybody looking at the growth for the schools? When I say this, for an example, back toward my way, I live in Lillington. I'm at 217 Woodview Court. Our area is booming. Harnett Central is already overpopulated. So what is the plans for us to build a new school? Not only build a new school, is anyone looking at the developers and saying, hey, let's set an account to the side and let them help build new schools? Because I can tell you as a taxpayer, and as a taxpayer of Harnett County, I'm sure a lot of these folks are the exact same way. They don't want their property tax to keep going up. We're tired of footing the bill for all these developers to come in and want to keep developing and developing. Plus, we're tired of folks that actually know someone in the construction business and actually are getting their pockets full. So when that being said, what we always say is when there's corruption, the voters will vote. So Mr. Matthews, I hope that you push back the Weatherspoon and say, hey, I don't want this young man in my district. Because I can tell you, as you know, I've been in Harnett County for 40 years plus, just as long as just about anyone in this room. I know a lot of people in Dunn and Irwin. I know a lot of people in Coates. It's going to be a heck of a race if it's just you and me. But I can tell you, if I was you, I'd push it back to Weatherspoon and say, Weatherspoon, I don't want those thousands of people voting against me. Because I can tell you, they don't want you in office. They don't want him in office. There's a bunch they don't want in office. So I can promise you it will be I don't want to say easy win, but it's going to be a heck of a race. And I can tell you, thousands of people don't want that. Not only that, but did you know in your own neighborhood, there's actually people that own business in Lillington that actually have lost customers or clients due to the asphalt plant that's already there in Lillington because of the smell. The tar smell that they smell now, they get a headache. When they get a headache, they don't go to those businesses anymore. Do you know that already? I bet you don't. You know how I know you don't know that? Because these folks have never met you before, and they live in key fields. So when I say those kind of things, once again, a lot of people we know. So when I say that, we as a group need to get out and see the public. Not just your little friends that you got that you feel like is in your little community. You need to go see all of Harnett County. The folks that were actually here the other day about the road, Hodges Chapel Road, every one of them talked to me afterwards. You know why? Because I knew every single one of them. That's the sad part is I know everyone in this county. So when I say that, these folks won't change. The first thing they actually said is, what do we want you on this board?
Thank you.
So that's the thing you got to look at.
Thank you.
Hi there, guys and ladies. I'm Rebekah Brock, 5220 Christian Light Road, Fuquay, Ferino. I take off my mask now so I can speak, but I want to say that the Harnett County vaccination rate has gone up. So right now, we just checked it, it's 54% have double doses in the county, which is terrific. And 67% has one dose. And the Harnett County school system's COVID dashboard shows a decrease in COVID cases. So things are going in the right direction, which is great. I would just like to make one quick comment. How did Roger Ferino last week get 40 minutes to speak? And you asked Mr. Griggs to sit down after 30 seconds past his 3 minutes.
Mr. Ferino was speaking at a public hearing.
Pardon?
Mr. Ferino was speaking at a public hearing, not a public comment session.
Thank you. I appreciate the difference. What I want to talk about is the map making. It has been a tortuous process for all of us, I'm sure for you all as well. But the difference is we don't have all of the comments that you've made potentially in private about the maps and what you would like done. Some of them are in public, and I would like to request that you all provide us with a list of the changes that you've made for the maps, who made them, and what were those changes, so that we can see what the differences were between version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 seems to have taken a lot of territory out of District 1. Neighborhoods that are historically minority neighborhoods are now in your district, Mr. Nichols, your district, Mr. Weatherspoon. I don't understand that. So I'm sure Mr. Schauer will talk to us this evening about the version 6. But I'm here to say that it has been very difficult to follow the changes without a syllabus of those requested changes. And that should be all done in public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alan Longman. I'm 234 Hamilton Road in Bond Level. The reason I'm speaking is for many reasons. The main reason is Kristen Griggs is something that you have to actually see the civil case. Once you see the civil case, you take the time out to see the civil case, it will be very clear as day that it was murder. In the way it was presented and how it was presented, you have no other conclusion to make. Go see the tape and judge for yourself. But I know you would know something wrong with that. Second thing I want to talk about is the maps. I don't like the fact that maps are changed to keep people out from running for office. I don't like the fact that they're being changed to put other people in the place of authority so that they can turn around and run for office. I'm talking about Jim Bergen. I don't know what power he has over people and how they are not independent and what's being moved. But to me, it seems like someone from the upper branches of the party is making these moves. And I don't like the fact that division and the way you're redistricting is preparing for future wins. And I don't think it was meant to be done that way. I don't know if you're going to win because they've been rearranged and there's nothing no one could do about it, but people will remember. And I still think we have to look up past Mr. Witherspoon and look for Jim Bergen and see what he has to say about this. How much of what's been going on has to do with him? And what is it prepared? Is Mr. Witherspoon going to be taking his place in the legislature? Is that what the thing is going to happen? You failed as mayor. You failed as, in my opinion, as county commissioner. I think that's a...
Mr. Ferino, please refrain from personal attacks.
Personal attacks. I'm just saying that we are allowed to have an opinion.
That's your opinion, yes, sir.
Do something good.
And
that's what I meant.
Right.
All right. And I still think there's more to the story than what has been present. And I'm saying no matter what you do with redistricting, you're going to have to deal with the public. And the public's going to put things together eventually. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Long.
Good evening. My name is Rosa Smith-Williams, 3273 Bun Level, Irwin Road. Thank you for allowing me time to speak. God loves all of his children, and he has created us to be treated equally. And so in version 6 of the map, it appears that there's gerrymandering occurring. And I hope that you would make certain that that is not the case. Because of lack of explanations. I do not see the reasoning behind some of the maps, and maybe that would clarify some things for me if we could get some explanations for that. But I know that all people deserve to be represented. And so I am requesting that those explanations be given to us and that we be allowed to, at the next public hearing, because I wanted to speak at the last one that was 40 minutes with the gentleman. He did his homework, but 40 minutes was a long time for him to speak. I want all people to have an opportunity to voice their concerns, and having representation on all boards, the school board and the board of commissioner is important for all of the people who live in Harnett County. And so I ask that we be given an opportunity to clearly understand the divisions of the map with clear explanations for those. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Watson, 12 Pioneer Court, Lillington, North Carolina.
Excuse me, Ms. Watson. Mr. Wood, would you fix that microphone so she won't have to stand on her tiptoes?
Thank you. Thank you, sir. My concern is the maps. We do need fair maps. We do need fair representation all over the county. I'm presently in District 1, but as I was reviewing the map, I am being shifted out of my district. And I'm just wanting to know why, because we were not able to help y'all plan the maps, which citizens should be able to help plan the maps with you, not just look at maps that you say that belong to us now. So I hope that you do reconsider in moving me out of my district. I've been in my district since I've been a taxpayer here in Harnett County, and I choose to want to remain there. I do have a large minority district within District 1 over where I live at. So I would love to be able to keep speaking to my friends and neighbors about how we live and what we desire in our area. If there's something that you can do on this, I choose that you do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Watson.
My name is Jean Sicoli. I live at 519 Falling Water Road in Spring Lake, North Carolina. I'm here tonight representing the North Carolina Poor People's Campaign. I am the chair of the Sandhills Circle, and we are very concerned with what we're seeing on these redistricting maps. I want to give just a little history lesson. In 1812, when Governor Gerry of Massachusetts signed a bill that created a partisan district in the Boston area that looked like a salamander, hence the name gerrymandering. Now, I'd like to remind everyone that the Poor People's Campaign is nonpartisan. We do get involved in policy issues, but we do not support one party over another. It's strictly on policy. Gerrymandering is the practice of setting boundaries of electoral districts to favor specific political interests within legislative bodies, often resulting in the districts with consolidated boundaries rather than compact areas. When you look at whatever version that you look at of your maps, which I understand that there are now 6, I got a copy of map 6 today. We have partnered as the Poor People's Campaign with the Southern Coalition for Social Justice. We've been awarded a grant to be able to look into Harnett County with redistricting and what's happening on this Board of Commissioners. So we will be participating in the meetings. If you were to put up any of the maps from 1 through 6 for Harnett County is the poster child for gerrymandering. When you put a map up, I encourage everyone to look. If there isn't a salamander going through Harnett County, then there would never have been one. I think with transparency, had you put more information out on how these maps were developed and let the citizens know, I mean, what was used to do these districts? Did you use party? Did you use color? Did you use income? Did you use age? I mean, we'd like to know what your particulars are in setting these maps, and you've provided nothing to us. The second part that I'll be very brief on, I'm going to move to the asphalt plant. I just want to let the Board of Commissioners know the Poor People's Campaign is totally transparent, and we will be participating in fighting against this asphalt plant with our environmental justice system, and they will be coming to Harnett County. That group is led by William Barber III, the first son of Reverend Dr. Barber, who I would venture to guess that most people in this room know who Dr. Barber is. And we will be partnering, and through the Sandhill Circle, we will be keeping track of what's going on in Harnett County. There's no free pass.
Thank you, Ms. Sicoli. That concludes our 30 minutes that we have for public comments.
I have something to say.
Yes, Ms. McKoy.
I'm not standing here to speak about District 1. I'm here to speak about all the districts in this county. And I want you to know that in order for the minorities in this county to have any kind of representation on the commission board as well as the school board, we had to go to court and file a lawsuit under the Supreme Court in 1980. That was the first time we had representation in this county, even though we were paying taxes in this county. And I personally feel, no, I won't say personally feel, the maps show that all the complaints and all the changes were centered around District 1. But I want to say this to you. I may be out of order, but I stand here to speak for the citizens. I'm not speaking for a commission board. I'm speaking for the citizens of this county. Because I don't want to see us move forward and ignore the wish of the citizens of this county. I ran in 2014 because I seen a need to be a part of the change. I just want to say this to you, and I hope you don't take this personal, because it's not personal. I'm giving it to you in this message because I feel very passionate about what I'm doing, and I feel very passionate about representing every citizen in this county. Yes, ma'am. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what party you are. I'm going to represent every citizen. But I see that some of the changes that was made in the map was centered around District 1. Black voters' numbers are not the sole measure of where minority voters in Harnett County have adequate representation. It is a relevant measure, but it's not the only measure. And we should not reduce our evaluation of the minority representation. The minority representation. The community has been long represented by District 1 since the 80s. And it was carved out and split up for reasons that is unclear. It's unclear why we made these changes in the map. And I feel personally that the community should not be split up
especially without the public having knowledge of why it was done. Now, I appreciate the attorney firm that drew up the map, and when I made a complaint in the last meeting, he did say to me, Ms. McKoy, we can't do that simply because it would defeat the numbers. We are making changes for reasons that are unclear and unknown to the public. We need to explain what we are doing and the reason why we are doing it. And why the voters of Harnett County are best served by these changes that we've made in these maps. The board should not feel pressure to enact on the map because of a deadline that we have on the 17th. And I'll be honest with you, the reason I'm standing here is because it saddens me that the Board of Education made a vote today to go alone outside of the commissions. We shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. We should be able to sit down and work together and draw these maps for the citizens of this county. These maps are not drawn for us to run or whatever. But I'm just saddened by what is happening here. And I know I'm probably out of order, whatever, as a commissioner to speak, but I felt that I had to. Throughout this process, I worked in a good faith effort towards a map that represented the interests of all the citizens of here, all the voters here in Harnett County. And I will continue to do that. So I'm asking you, we don't have to make a decision which way we go tonight as far as drawing these maps. We should do it based on, and we should make whatever we're doing, the public should have some input in, and they should know what we are doing. So, and we should do it in the best interest of Harnett County, simply because we are growing, and simply because we want to see a change in Harnett County. I don't want to see Harnett County go back to 1980, where minorities were not even considered for nothing but our taxpayer. So I'm asking you, I'm just making a plea to you. Whatever we do it for the benefit of this county, and do it in a way that every citizen in this room feel that they are represented. That's all I ask. And you can do what you want to or say what you want to about me. I'm not a person to hold my feelings back. I gotta tell you how I feel. And I gotta tell you that it saddens me that we cannot draw a map along with the school board so we can have the same districts in this county. It is really sad what has happened here. And this has never happened before. Never. Not tonight.
Next we will have a public hearing regarding the revised electoral district boundaries for the Harnett County Board of Commissioners. Prior to opening that public hearing, I would like to ask Mr. Schauer and Mr. Appel if they have anything they would like to share.
Yes. So I'll let Mr. Craig Schauer from Brooks Pierce, our outside counsel, speak to details. Obviously presented tonight are the maps. There was a version 6 that did come out. Again, I'll let Mr. Schauer kind of talk about the process that was posted for everyone's view. But Mr. Schauer will kind of go over the process and the history, and then we'll allow the chairman to open up for a public hearing to hear from the public.
Thank you, commissioners. So what I'd like to do, and I apologize if this is something that we've covered at previous meetings, but I think it would be beneficial for me to cover it again. I'd like to talk about the process that we've gone through. To start with, because of the pandemic, the census data that we rely on to draw maps was delayed. Typically, the United States Census Bureau releases the data in spring, which leaves county commissioners, boards of education, the legislatures across the nation abundant time to redraw their maps, months, in fact. Because of the pandemic, the data was not released until the fall. And because of the demand on redistricting, right? The entire nation is going through this process at the same time, getting the data too late. There is essentially a shortage of demographers who are able to use the census data to draw maps. So we were not able to present a first draft of the map until late October for the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education. And at that point, we were facing a statutory deadline of November 17th. We had less than a month to go through this process.
Can you speak a little louder, please?
Okay, I can. All right, so the census data was released late because of the inability to get the data and the demand on demographers who work with the data. We were not able to present a map to the county commissioners and to the Board of Education until late October. We are operating under a deadline of November 17th, which was a deadline mandated by the General Assembly that the county commissioners pass a resolution no later than November 17th adopting a new map, which left us less than a month to redraw maps. I'll note that I was at the Board of Education meeting this morning. They are asking for one additional revision before they adopt a map. The Board of Education is not subject to the same November 17th deadline that the Board of Commissioners is subject to. For whatever reason, the General Assembly passed a law that said the Board of Commissioners must make their maps final by November 17th. It did not pass an identical law for the Board of Education. So I told them, even though practically speaking it makes a lot of sense for them to comply with the November 17th deadline, they did not have the same obligation that this board does. In terms of the map drawing process, I met with the board, I believe, in late August, and I explained the rules that govern this process from a legal compliance standpoint. And the objective of going through this process was to draw a legally compliant map. The two primary considerations through the map drawing process were rebalancing the districts, because some districts were too large and some districts were too small. The second was being mindful of the Voting Rights Act, which prohibits the board from taking actions that would dilute the voting power of minorities in this county. And the board was very clear, as they should be, we will comply with these two acts. The third component that was considered is the board's allowed to draw maps that keep incumbents in their existing districts. In other words, they can redraw the map and make sure that incumbents, as we make changes, stay in the same districts that they currently reside in. With those three instructions and those three instructions alone, I met with the demographer and said, let's create a first draft of the map. And that was the first draft that was presented to the boards at a joint meeting sometime in October, and forgive me that I don't remember the date. That map was drawn solely based on three pieces of information. Well, 4 pieces of information. First, we took a look at the first map, right? We took a look at the existing districts, and we tried to keep the districts in the same place as possible because that's what the citizens of the county are familiar with and what the commissioners and the Board of Education members are familiar with. Second, we took account of incumbency. While we made changes, we tried to keep incumbents in the same districts. Third, we were mindful of rebalancing the populations of the districts so that each district was no more than 5% above or below the ideal district or the average size of a district for the county. And fourth, we were very mindful to protect District 1 and the minority population within it. And so the reason why District 1 continues to look like, I think somebody called it a salamander, is not because of racial gerrymandering. It's to comply with the federal law, which requires us to protect the minority population in this county to the extent possible. And so as we went through iterations of the map, the rule was don't touch District 1 unless it's going to be positive for the minority members of this community. And that's exactly what we did. And that's the conversation that Ms. McKoy and I had at the meeting. And there were requested changes that would say, hey, can we try this? And the impact on District 1 would result in a decrease in the minority population or the minority voting power of District 1. And so we said no. So the map that was presented to the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education at the joint meeting was created by the demographer and I in a vacuum. In an agnostic environment, we didn't consider demographics aside from the total population and the black minority population in District 1. We didn't consider politics. We didn't consider any types of those. All we considered was how can we redraw the maps that complies with the Voting Rights Act and the total population requirements protection clause. At that meeting, I met with a representative of each of the districts, one district at a time. And the commissioner and the Board of Education member would come to me, and we'd start with District 1, and we went through all 5 districts. I remember Chairman Matthews would call out whose district was next, and it was a very organized process. It was available to the public. Public members were in attendance. I remember having conversations with members of the public as we were going through these changes, and so I believe it was a very transparent process. I left that meeting with a set of instructions to make certain changes. The changes were truly a handful of changes, and I can recite most of them from memory, and I'd like to do so quickly since it seems like that's an issue that a lot of members of the public have. The first change that I recall was Commissioner Matthews, I now know you live in Keith Hill's neighborhood, something I did not know until I entered this process. I've learned a lot about Harnett County, and I really love the county because of it. You were essentially an outlier in your neighborhood. The rest of your neighborhood was not in your district. And so you made a simple request, I'd like to keep my neighborhood whole. We made that change because that was a change that we could make with balancing the population and not impacting the minority population in District 1. I remember the representatives from District 2, Commissioner Johnson and Mr. Powell from the Board of Education, wanted certain changes around Irwin and the I-95 corridor. As we first attempted those changes, they were actually substantially large populations. And so it was a change we attempted and a change that we decided we could not make without kind of moving everything around the map. And I make this and I'm going to put a placeholder in this because that's actually the explanation for for Plan 6. But that was the second change that was discussed at the public meeting and one we tried to implement. But in Plan 5, we determined that it was not feasible because it would have caused too many other changes, and so we left it to the side. I believe we had Mr. Weatherspoon, you wanted to try to consolidate or expand the area around Angier, where I believe you live, and you wanted to try to increase the footprint of your district around the area you lived and include Angier. We attempted to make that change. We were able to do so. We had to make some offsets along the District 4 and District 3 boundaries, but we were able to affect that change. You also discussed potentially moving, and if you look at the map, I believe it's 421 that runs from Lillington west, correct me if I'm wrong, potentially moving parts of those districts either into District 1 or District 5. That was a great example where that was a requested change that we could not make because it would have impacted the minority population in District 1 or it would have pushed District 5 into the legal limits of how large the district could be. Mr. Nickel, I recall that you wanted a street in your neighborhood included within your district. I think it's the neighborhood you actually live in. We were to enact that change. I think you had a clear and respectful disagreement with the shape of District 1 and how it creates a great inconvenience. It essentially injects itself into your district and causes a lot of difficulties. We attempted to find a way to remove District 1 from District 5 to try to consolidate it and not have it be interrupted by District 1, but we were not able to do so in light of the Voting Rights Act. It turns out that there are substantial minority populations within the southwestern corner of Harnett County that we needed to capture and keep within District 1 in order to try to maintain the minority population in District 1 to create a VRA compliant district. Off the top of my Mr. Lemons of the school board wanted part of his neighborhood included kind of in his district, and so that was a change along the District 4 and District 4 and District 3 border. So we ran those changes and we presented a version 5 to the commission. I think it was actually a version 4 to the Board of Commissioners and Board of Education. As we presented that, Mr. Weatherspoon, I believe you had a request that we revisit the town of Angier because we were not able to include enough territory around it as you originally requested. And so we revisited the map and that created Plan 5. I remember that was a Monday morning meeting. We were intending to discuss Plan 4. We received the changes to Plan 5 earlier in the prior week, but because of an inability to reach the demographer because of other demands he's facing with other maps, we weren't able to run that change until Friday evening, at which point it was not available to the public until Monday morning. And so the delay on Plan 5 was really not a problem, was not caused by the commissioners or the Board of Education. It was caused by the demand on the demographer that we work with and the inability to run that change prior to that. this leads us to, I believe, Plan 6. So similar to Mr. Weatherspoon, who came to us and said, I'd like you to retry my request around Angier to see if you can make it work, and we were able to. Mr. Johnson and Mr. Powell, the representatives from District 2, said that they would like us to revisit, sorry, I keep stepping away from the mic. They would like us to revisit District 2. They want us to try to consolidate the area around Irwin. Mr. Powell made a point that it covers essentially 3 different districts. He wanted to try to keep it all in his district, and that's actually where he lives. He wanted to kind of have his town in his district. And Mr. Johnson wanted to return part of the I-95 corridor to District 2 where it existed. We attempted that change at their request. It resulted in 2,200 people being moved from District 3 into District 2. That was a sizable population. It was so large that it required kind of a waterfall of changes around the map. Could you show us District Plan 6, please? So you can see the I-95 corridor in Plan 6 has been added, as well as Irwin was moved from District 3 into District 2. The result of that was District 2 became too large. And so what we then had to do is we had to move territory from District 2 into District 5 because we were otherwise landlocked. You couldn't touch District 1 because we're being mindful of the minority population in District 1, and you couldn't move it into District 3 because District 3 was already too close to being too large. So in other words, as we added population to District 2, the only solution we had was to move some of that extra population now in District 2 into District 5. Well, as soon as we moved it into District 5 became too large, which required us to then take part of District 5 and move it into District 4. So you can see one of the differences between Plan 5 and Plan 6 is District 4 actually extends further down the county border into District 5. As we went through this process, one difference in District 1 was in Plan 5, District 1 had a little bit of an offshoot that reached towards the county border on the south, or I guess on the northwest side of the county, kind of reached out towards 421. We were able to look at that offshoot and determine that if we removed that population and moved it into whether it be District 5 or District 4, it turned out District 4, it actually increased the minority population percentage in District 1 by a small but meaningful, by 0.10%, right? It wasn't meaningful, but it was a positive move for the minority voters in District 1. So therefore, we moved that section out of District 1 into District 4, which is a positive move for the minority population in District 1, and allowed for a stronger, I guess, corridor of District 4 as it moved along the county border. As District 4 took on additional population from District 5, that required changes to District 4 and District 3. We had to offload some of the population in District 4 now into District 3. And so what we did is we had to wind back some of the changes around Angier that Mr. Weatherspoon requested, and we also moved some of the population surrounding Lillington into District 3, which had already started to pick up some of that population. At that point, we had finally rebalanced the map. In other words, a change requested in District 2 required us to essentially go all the way around the clock to make changes to all the districts in order to make them compliant and within the population guardrails. And so those are the changes that went into Plan 6. So at this point, I welcome questions from the board members. I felt like it was helpful to the community and to the commissioners to remind them of this process. I have prepared 2 resolutions for the commissioners. One resolution is to adopt Plan 5. The other resolution is to adopt Plan 6. The resolutions are identical with the exception of which map you choose. I want to point out that the resolutions both have 2 components. One is under law, before you can redistrict, you have to make a finding that there's substantial inequality, or in other words, the current districts as they stand now under the census data, some are too large, some are too small, they're not equal. That's finding 1. The second part is then the decision of which map the commissioners would like to adopt. And the 2 options are Plan 5 and Plan 6. Again, I want to reiterate for everyone here, because of the unique statutory deadline that the commissioners are facing, there is a mandate from the General Assembly that we conclude this process no later than November 17th. That is not a mandate that the Board of Election faces, so they have the option to make additional changes. With that, I welcome any questions. Thank you for your patience as I ran through that process.
Thank you, Mr. Schauer. I appreciate you going through that. I think that that was important. We've had several requests for that, so thank you for sharing that with us. Any questions, fellow commissioners, you have for Mr. Schauer?
I'd like to know what the ramifications are if we don't meet that 17th deadline.
The ramifications?
Yeah, I can't seem to get a straight answer from anybody on exactly.
So the statute doesn't have a penalty for failing to meet it. It is just a mandate. The ramifications would be you could potentially expose yourself to a lawsuit by a citizen who felt like they wanted the maps drawn by the 17th and you failed to comply with it. And so that would be the liability that you would face.
Okay. And why is it also, I mean, if you see down here, District 5, and then you've got 2 that snakes all the way around, the reason why you have that large population there and why 2 snakes all the way over here as well is because of the high concentrated population that we have down here in the western side. Now, why didn't you guys, no, I mean, the only reason why you kept up with bringing 2 all the way up here was so you can keep the incumbents in there, is that correct?
I'm sorry, when you say bringing 2 all the way up here, could you be a little more clear? I didn't understand.
I'm meaning from the western side, that
Yes, sir.
snakes all the way up to Dunn.
Yes.
You see how you have just that little teeny pocket in Dunn, yet down here in Anderson Creek, between Anderson Creek, Spout Springs, and Barbecue, you have roughly, just between Carolina Lakes, Anderson Creek, Lexington Plantation, and Barbecue, about 32,000 people. So you want to talk about unfair representation. I mean, it seems like down on this side of the county, you have about 50-some thousand people, down all in that one area, which is nearly a half of the population of the county. Yet you only have 1 representative, which is myself, down there on that side.
Yes, sir. So the reason District 2 looks the way it does is because of District 1. Because of the footprint of District 1, it really kind of squishes District 2 against the corners and the boundaries of the county. And so therefore there's only so many places where you can grab population, and because of the way it was drawn in the original maps and us trying to maintain the original maps to the extent possible on the original drafts that we presented to the boards, we tried to retain that footprint, which resulted in the district essentially traversing almost the entirety of the east and western southern part of the county.
Are there ever instances where you don't, where it's not possible to have that DRA be met?
Yes.
Kind of similar to what we're looking at and dealing with now?
So there are instances. The challenge is the ability to defend yourself in a VRA lawsuit is lengthy and costly. And I know I have been advising these at the instruction of both boards. I have been informing the Southern Coalition of Social Justice of each of the changes of the map that we've made. I've had a productive and cordial discussion with them. I know a representative from the coalition is here. We spoke earlier today. And as we've gone through this process, they have continued to say that they don't find any errors in the process as we've gone through this. And so the tactic of leaving the district in place is to avoid a potential lawsuit by potential plaintiffs who could be represented by an organization such as the Southern Coalition.
Well, I mean, you hear the displeasedness of everybody that's in here, and I mean, I've been hearing it all across the county, so it kind of sounds like we're going to be getting a lawsuit either way. I mean, the way that this is drawn and that you keep trying to tailor it, I mean, honestly, it just seems like you're digging a deeper and deeper hole. So
you might phrase it more like the county finds itself stuck between 2 hard places. There's a population that says we need to comply with the VRA and keep District 1 as it is. There appears to be a population that says, at least I was attending at one presentation, that we should scrap the current districts and go with for instance, a 7-district model. The 7-district model is a creative solution. The problem is, as Ms. McKoy mentioned earlier, this county was part of a lawsuit decades ago, and there's a consent decree in place, and that consent decree is a court order, a federal court that has said that the county must have 5 districts. And so the option of simply moving to a model such as 7 districts isn't in the county's hands, absent going to court.
Okay, I mean, I also understand that the lawsuit, I think it was between Porter and Stewart, that correct?
I believe those were the named individuals in the lawsuit.
Okay. I mean, it talks about compactness, not having excessive tendrils, et cetera. And it seems like that with the models that we've been presented since day one, that all of those are, not being met.
So compactness the threshold for compactness is loosened when you're speaking with the VRA in order to comply with the Voting Rights Act.
Mr. McKoy, do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Question. I'm not questioning what you did with the map, but I do want to question what you did with in District 1. So see, District 1, all of this centers around District 1. That's
Yes,
is
ma'am.
the problem right there. But you went up on Pioneer Court, and that part has been in District 1 ever since the burying system. And I see you took that out and you put it in District 4, I think. So what was that for? The balance, the numbers, or what?
So
because this community was African American.
So to be clear, I'm not exactly sure what part of the map you're referencing. Could you? In other words, you named a community, and I don't recognize the community by name, and so I'm not
you don't
familiar.
recognize?
Yeah.
It's not tipped in right there on the map there. For
Did
District
it
4.
previously extend into District 4, kind of in the north? Yeah.
Commissioner McKoy, is that Phase 6 or Phase 5?
All right, page.
That part. Okay. So
that little tab there.
yes. All right. So that is one change that we made as we went through the changes as part of Plan 6. As we were extending District 4 further south to move part of the population of 5 into 4 to rebalance it, we took a look at that extension, and it turns out that the minority population in that extension was actually below the average voting age percentage across the district. In other words, the District 1, as it's currently drawn and as it's been drawn through this process, has always had roughly 40% black voting age population, right? So 40% of the voting age population of District 1 has been black. It turns out that extension was actually below 40%. And so by removing it, we were able to increase the voting age population percentage of blacks in District 1, which is moving it as a higher percentage in generally the way what you try to accomplish when working on a VRA district.
I still don't understand that because I know that area. I know my district. I know the area. I know the people in those areas.
So, ma'am, there might be a pocket. I don't know. You know that area much better than I do. For instance, if there is a pocket of a strong concentration of blacks in that area, but in order to get that pocket, we have to go through several census tracts or pieces of territory that are predominantly white. What it means is in order to get that black population in your district, we have to bring in several white citizens into your district, which means as a result, we end up lowering the percentage of blacks as a voting age percentage in your district. And so that might be what happened there, whereas you are very familiar with that community, but as a whole, in order to get that community, that branch that we took out wasn't that strong of a percentage of blacks. And so we removed it because it increased the minority percentage in your district.
Do that. Let me interject one thing. I know in the last public hearing that we had last Monday, I did allow some liberty with regard to discussion that really did not directly pertain to the district maps, the new district maps. Tonight, I would ask you to please keep your comments focused on those topics, as we, as you can tell, have a rather lengthy agenda even after this. So if you would please keep those comments focused on the discussion of these two maps that we've been discussing here tonight. At this time, I call the public hearing to order. Yes, sir.
Charles Moreton, 86 Gwendolyn Way. This is a mandate. On the door of this building, it says it's required to enter. Nobody here is wearing it. The majority are not wearing it. No repercussion to the mandate. If there's no repercussion to the November 17th date, other than a possible lawsuit, do what your constituents want you to do. Make a correct map. Mr. Weatherspoon has requested many changes to the map to grow his area within Andrew. That's where he lives. People don't want him there. They didn't vote for him. Why can't we tell him no? Your request is denied. Just because you put in a request does not mean it has to be entertained or made. All right? We're moving population out of District 1, out of Ms. McKoy's district, to help with Mr. Weatherspoon's request, to help with other requests of redrawing these maps. And that doesn't seem to matter to the commission. With Phase 5, Mr. Weatherspoon did a great job of getting rid of my neighborhood as part of the No Asphalters group, which is great. We don't like you anyway, but we gave them to you, which is bad for you. With District 6, he got rid of more No Asphalters and gave them to you. Sucks for you, but that's a fight that you're going to have to take if we go with this. We'd rather focus on Lou, because Lou knew and Lou lied directly to us. We'd like to direct that fight back to him. All right? 5 commissioners, 4 old white guys up front, 1 black woman down here, and a folding table. 6 chairs. That's all I got to say. Figure it out.
Anyone else like to speak?
Do you want me to give my name and all again?
Ms. Capps, you have her name, correct? Yes.
Okay. Why I pop back up here, I need a little bit of clarification because, you talk about minorities, but I've heard many times tonight African American, black. What about all people of color? Where is the representation there? Because if you look at current numbers that we have in Harnett County, if you include not the black vote, but if you include the vote for people of color, it really makes a difference in the numbers. We're right around 20% if you're looking at just black population. But if you look at people of color, we're at 42%. So how can you justify a map that addresses the minorities that are at 20% when you're not addressing all people of color? Instead, you're packing everyone into that district and lessening the impact of all minorities that could possibly happen in other districts, and maybe have, when you look at that gerrymandered snake going through, and it's absolutely no disrespect for Commissioner McKoy, but when you look at that, how did the people down there in Western Harnett, thank you, where I live in Western Harnett, how does Commissioner McKoy have enough time and enough energy to represent the people all the way down in Western Harnett that feel like we're never heard? We never get the nice things in Western Harnett. So we're looking at, through Poor People's Campaign, what about all the other people of color? Maybe you've lessened people of color's votes by packing, and that's what it is. It's packing that district. So how do you represent all people of color and not put them into other districts? Plus, something that I found interesting as we're listening to all of the changes that were coming through and being requested, it sounded to me as the requests were, protect me in my district. But through everything that we all should believe in our democracy is the voters pick their representatives. Representatives do not pick their voters.
I understand there's some people outside that want to come in and the door's locked. Could somebody open the door?
Can you speak to the regards to why Because I've had the same question. Why is it that we are
I got one more question you can ask.
Between.
So what is the percentage of the census report that did not get filled out this year? Because you say you're going by the census report. From my understanding, for everything I've read, due to the pandemic, there was actually a lot of census reports that didn't get filled out. So what is that percentage?
Mr. Schauer, would you first address that question about the people of color versus the black, and
yes,
and then the second question?
So, if I could, I'll start with the second question because it's
sure.
shorter.
Okay. Or whichever order you'd like to take.
There are individuals who did not complete the census. That's been reported. I don't know how widespread it is in Harnett County. I can say that across the nation, government body after government body relies on the census data to redistrict. In some states, it's the law. In North Carolina, it's not mandated, but every redistricting process that's taking place is based on the census data. To the extent that it is not perfect, that's unfortunate, but it's as perfect of a body of information that we have as we go through this process. In terms of the Voting Rights Act, so the Voting Rights Act looks at minorities on a discrete basis. So it doesn't assume simply because you're not white, you vote alike with not whites. And so an obvious comparison would be the Latino population. So if we were in Texas, which has a large Latino population, the Voting Rights Act would most likely focus on the Latino population in the area because it's a large enough body that can form a district to be represented by. The Voting Rights Act does not, you do not assume that the black population and the Latino population or any other minority population in the county votes alike. And so simply lumping together Latinos and blacks in order to comply with the Voting Rights Act is not necessarily a compliance. In fact, it could be viewed as packing. In other words, you're saying, well, we're going to put black individuals in a district, we're going to mix in a few bit of Latinos. We know they vote differently, and so we're going to just cancel out their votes. And so the Voting Rights Act requires you to look at minority populations on a discrete basis. The largest concentration of minorities, discrete minority population in the county is blacks. That is why there's a lawsuit. That's why there's District 1. The Latino population in the district was not significant enough or concentrated enough to trigger the Voting Rights Act, which is why District 1 is focused solely on the black voting age population and not the other races that comprise the county.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
So actually, I appreciate you answering that question, sir. So with that being said, Nickel, I would actually agree with you. We wait. Don't do it till the November 17th date. Let's get all of our data. There's actually other data we can look at. There's tax information throughout the county that we can actually look at to see what the population is in each area. There's all kinds of different data that we can look at to see what the population is. Not just the census report, which, once again, by all means, everything that I've actually read, actually, it's a high percentage that this past census report did get filled out. So I would say that probably like Miss McKoy that knows her area very well, a lot of those folks probably didn't fill out the census report. Guess what? You're taking a group and you're just moving them out that's been in District 1 that's been going forever, and you're moving them because of what you think is done on the census report. So I would actually say, Mr. Nichols, you're actually right. What I would do is I'd say let's wait. Mr. Matthews, once again, you heard the public. If I was you, I'd be looking at Weatherspoon and say, you made this mess, you lay in this bed, let them take care of it. I'll leave that up to you, though, but once again, that's just me. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Rebekah Fuller, 230 Morgan Farm Drive. I corresponded with Mr. Matthews and Mr. Appel over the weekend, or earlier this week. You made a statement about the redistricting to line up with the school board, that it hasn't been accomplished in this county for 10 years. This morning I listened to the board meeting that they had, where the school district is now going to proceed with the version 7. So they are going to make their own changes because they do not have their own dates. So the whole purpose of you guys and ma'am coordinating with the school board was to create districts that were in unison. That's not going to happen. So we need to take our time and go back and relook at all these maps and find out what's going to work best for the voters in the commissioner districts, which excludes now the school board. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
First of all, I want to thank you for your transparency by providing this hearing. Those of you that note, that have looked at the map, you'll see that there's a star that represents the location of each commissioner and a circle with a dot in it that represents each school board member. I have spent a career in data analytics, and the possibility of a computer generating a map that included the minority district with full representation, the possibility that every seated commissioner and school board member would be located back in their district is nearly impossible. The question I've got to the gentleman who provided the maps, was there a computer simulation of, without regard to any seated representative, was that produced? And if so, where is it? One more thing I want to comment on. I've heard a couple references to my seat as such representing a particular district. None of these seats are your property. They're the property of these people out here. So we need to be mindful of that in the language we use. But I would like to answer, was there a computer simulation without regard to any seated representative?
So, no, there was not a computer simulation. To be honest, I don't think the only computer simulation I'm aware of, I think, was done in the context of the General Assembly, and I don't know the resources or the cost of it, but it far exceeds the budget that the Commission has to run a simulation in this county. I'll add that, as far as I know, every county that is redistricting is taking into account where the incumbents live. It is a routine, legal, and customary part of the redistricting process. And so that as we draw a legally compliant map, that is, you are legally allowed to draw districts that keep existing representatives in their current districts.
So I take it there was not a computer simulation run without regard to any representative. There is software abundantly available that would do that. It's unfortunate that we spent a lot of money to have an individual or a law firm. I'm certainly a very good law firm, but it's unfortunate that we did that when a computer would have done it for probably next to nothing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langley. Mr. Langley, would you give Ms. Capps your address before you leave, please, sir? Yes, ma'am.
Dana Vasquez, 230 Heatherbrook Circle in Anderson Creek. In listening to the discussion, this is a bit confusing to me overall, and as I look at that map, like most other people, we're wondering what in the world. But from what I heard earlier, we're looking at having some legal lawsuits or whatever anyway. And if I understood correctly, part of the problem with trying to create this map is due to some legal thing that we're bound to from 40 years ago or so. Would it not be something to consider to be proactive and go after that to better represent the voters overall, if that's the problem, the law in the first place?
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Rosa Smith-Williams, how many lawsuits have you been faced with recently, Board of Commissioners?
I don't know the answer to that question, Ms. Williams.
You sit on the board and you all don't know how many lawsuits you've...
I'm not aware of any.
That's what I was looking for.
Okay.
Thank you. I think lawsuits are not going to be that many, and I encourage you to do what's fair for all people, and especially for minorities who are routinely underserved and not considered in many matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Mr. Ferino?
Hello, Board. How are you? My name is Roger Ferino, 306 Pine Valley Lane. I spoke for 36 minutes the other day, not 40. But I did a lot of research, and there's a lot of information in the presentation that I gave, and a lot of the questions that have been asked tonight were in that presentation. I stand before you as an individual. I hold many positions in the county, but I stand before you as a private citizen that lives in Western Harnett that's interested in the proper representation of where I live, in hopes to improve the livelihood of my family and my kids. One thing, I only got 5 pages tonight to speak from instead of 40, but one thing that I think needs to be iterated again that hasn't been displayed, and it took me a long time to get into this, but it's to understand the timeline of these lawsuits that occurred. And when you follow along with the lawsuits that occurred and some of the stuff that happened at a higher level at the Supreme Court, some things peripheral, you get a better understanding of what's going on. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the stuff that's been talked about today has been discussed in a vacuum. And when the initial lawsuit was Porter and Stewart. Okay, now I'm not a lawyer, so this is just me reading the paperwork and putting all these pieces together on my own. Okay, so understand that. But when you read Porter and Stewart from 1989 is when it was filed. It was then settled a couple years later in 1992, and the premise of it was because back then Harnett County had 5 at-large members, where everybody in the county voted for the same 5 people, and because of that, because of the disparity because of the difference of the populations, none of the minorities were able to get elected. So what they decided was at that point in 1992 was they came up with the 5 districts, which we have right now. Also at that time, is somebody had asked where they came up with this map, is that in that lawsuit from 1992, you will see a very poorly copied version of this very close map. They chose Plan 4, I think is what it was. But that was the very first time when they initially approved this, from what I read, is the maps look like this back in 1992. They went back in 2002, they went back in 2012, and they updated them. And that's beyond my capability because I'm not a lawyer. But anyway. So that's Porter and Stewart. That's what governs what's going on here. I don't think it, when the discussion is, and I'm going to talk about this a little in my paper, is that I don't think that it restricts us from seven districts. I think what it does is it keeps us from having at-large members totally because of the population and stuff like that. The other thing is that I think we're operating in a vacuum, because when you sit here and you say the VRA, part of the VRA, I think Section 5, parts of that were struck down, I think, over time. There's also the Equal Protection Act, and there's also a Supreme Court case called Thornburg and Gingles, which provides the 3 tests that I discussed in my 30-minute speech last week, talking about compactness, contiguity, and majority population blocks versus minority population blocks. Okay, so I just set that up here. Okay. My whole premise for coming before you yet again is to continue to iterate the point that we need to address issues of redistricting. Let me say this before I go. I'm trying to stay with numbers and math, okay, and the things that I've read. And I do not mean to offend anybody if I cross any lines. I hope I don't, but I will discuss a little bit of issues of race and some partisan issues. And I know there's a lot of people in here from all across, so please forgive me that I have the best intentions in mind. My whole premise for coming before you yet again is to continue to iterate the point that we need to address issues of redistricting not wholly from a standpoint of race but economics. Last time I mentioned consideration of communities of interest were not solely based on race or ethnicity, but could be based on economic needs. Economic needs will represent the growth in the county for better opportunities for all of us. Reading through court documents that most of them I just received today at 2 o'clock, Porter and Stewart was first brought before the court. The county decided to meet the requirements set forth by establishing 5 separate districts as opposed to 5 at-large position to avoid lengthy litigation to make voting equal. While it states there was negotiation, was there a chance for due diligence for future changes that may significantly vary from the original agreement to occur? Over the years, there have been slight adjustments, but no changes of merit. It has been widely assumed that all actions in 2000, 2010, and 2021 were being made in compliance with lawsuits or to further avoid other lawsuits. By transitioning to districts, people in that district get to vote for that person that they represent, that represents them in that district, as opposed to the entire county. And I think that's where the whole thing about, somewhere I read it was one person, one vote, and that's where I think the whole thing about like my district comes from, okay? An interesting discussion arose in this morning's school board meeting as one of the members questioned that even though he lived a mile away from one school, but the nearest school in his district was 20 miles away. The consensus of the board was that all members represent the entire county. While I believe this is true in a general sense, if applied, does this violate the spirit of the Porter versus Stewart at large versus districted representation? I believe that since the time of the original lawsuit occurred, the black population has actually decreased by nearly 10% since it was first enacted. Our continuing to try to establish a community of interest solely based on the historic data of black populace with no regard for other factors is hurting us on few levels. When looking back at the lawsuits and the maps drawn 20 to 30 years ago, the district sits today similar to it did then, a circuitous district stretching across the county. The difference between now and then is the total population in the areas where it once was minuscule, where I live, is now 32,000 people. To continue to try to cram the same district into the same dynamic does not work any longer, some 30 years after the fact. Additionally, the increase in the Hispanic population has District 4 about 14% in proposed Plan 5. Ignoring the Hispanic growth as we move forward should not happen either. If all minorities were considered, it would balance out the proposed districts, allowing for better representation by everyone in a compacted manner, more in line with Supreme Court Thornburg versus Gingles. In the January 2020 North Carolina Law Review, Gallery Rachmaninman presented a paper called Math for the People, Reigning in Gerrymandering While Protecting Minority Rights. In one passage, she wrote, in House Bill 1 language directing commissions to respect communities of interest to the extent practical should at least be changed to remove specific reference to ethnic minorities as examples of communities that should not be split. The language could easily be read by a court hostile to minority voting rights to imply that extreme packing of minorities is favored, which it should not be, as this leads to non-competitive districts in which large numbers of minority voters must cast wasted votes. Minority interest groups may have sought this language as an assurance that commissions would not harm the opportunities of minority communities to elect candidates of preference, but that reassurance can hopefully come from amending the bill, as I am proposing, to greatly strengthen the Voter Rights Act assurance of equal opportunity and secure its constitutionality, not through language that could easily be used to harm minority communities through overpacking. Upon reading this, I realized something. The packing of this district has restricted the ability of the growth of minorities anywhere else in the county, especially in reference to elections. I surmise that while we are applying this lawsuit that deals with race, this is not what happens in Harnett County any longer because we do not have dense population of communities of interest that may have once existed. I say this that we are confusing party affiliation with race, and as such, it is hurting us all as described in the passage I just read. Considering that because of the minority district created in District 1, no other minority is able to successfully run in other districts because the minority populace is packed into District 1. A statement by Langon here in 1993's Group's Representation in Race-Conscious Districting, a case of the Emperor's Clothes, wasted votes or votes that a candidate did not need to win, as well as votes for losing candidates. The topic was also iterated in 2015's partisan gerrymandering and the efficiency gap. This is what happens to any minority in the other 4 districts. We have seen a few people run here and there, maybe in District 2, but there's been minimal, widespread, consistent participation of any minority group in the elections. Perhaps this is what we should focus on as a community. This in part because it is assumed that District 1 is the black district and the only district that a minority can win in. I iterate that this is wholly based on party issues than racial. Remember, only 203 black registered Republicans voted in 2020 in contrast to nearly 17,000 black Democrats. I've submitted I'm not putting up any slides today, but I compiled a list of all the results of all the primary races and the general races since 2008. I did this in conjunction with, from the other day, I described the races of the countywide races results from Bergen in Senate and Robinson for lieutenant governor. So you had the Senate seat was 2 races, 2 white males running, and then the lieutenant governor race was a black man running against a white female. Okay, here in the county, voting results were virtually the same, even though lieutenant governor is black. There are not many options for comparison when it comes to black people standing up to run for their office in the general election. One such time that did occur is interesting is in 2018. Mrs. McKoy beat DeSantos with a total of 3,847 to DeSantis' 2,179. Black woman versus a white woman. In Board of Education race, there was an incumbent black woman race running against a black man. Now this never happens, right? Bennett received 3,847 votes, the same as Miss McKoy. The commander of the black man received 2,182, not exact, but 3 votes off. The point is this: while everybody's vote should be strong as everyone else, the fact that we are trying to apply a rule to a situation that simply no longer exists in the same way as we did in the past. So in this way, I think it's based on partisan politics and not race, and we're trying to apply racial issues with District 1. In doing so, we're ignoring our present and our future. Okay, so first, let's stop selling the false bills of goods to the majority minority district. The district only reaches at most 42% of the populace of the community of interest, and to do so, we're dividing well-established communities to dilute their voices, as we've been talking about tonight. Second, to better address this issue, we need to add 2 commissioner and board education districts. It is time to expand from 5 to 7 in accordance with NC Statute 153A Part 4. Smaller districts will allow for better representation of everyone, while at the same time addressing population levels in the communities of interest. As the lawyer had stated before when he was talking about what happened when you took the extreme tendril out, it raises the population of people, but it offsets when you remove the minority, because the scale of reference for the percentage changes, and so that's what happens if we make these districts smaller by adding 2 more. In fact, I bet you if we did it, I bet you we could end up with a black and Hispanic community of interest. I've also I also had a presentation where I went through, because somebody had asked me, well, are we the only ones? Well, it got me thinking. So I went through and I looked at 50 other county commissioner maps from across the country: Florida, Nevada, Kansas. We are the only ones that have a map that look like this. The only ones that come close are maps that bump up against water. Third, we need to add 2 more voting precincts, while at the same time reapportioning total population in each so it's closer to the average number. Fourth, we need to ask the General Assembly for more time. Lots of people here said they want to just blow the lawsuits off and just keep on trucking, but I say that we should take some action and ask the General Assembly. There is no reason we cannot have more time. There's no presidential election this year, so there are no time constraints for the summer months. This year's primary is in March. In years past, they have been in May. The COVID issues and the tardiness of the census, we need to ask for this extra time so that all the people in this county can get a chance to be informed of all the changes. This morning at the school board meeting, they voted for a version 7. That was mere 9 hours ago, and no one has seen that change yet. Someone asked me if I'm a lawyer. I'm not, but I can read. What I do have a problem with is the things I cannot read. I only got these lawsuits today, and when you get into them and you start reading them, it's amazing. How our history comes to life when you read what happens, and there's a little I mean, it's great reading through this stuff, but my problem is that through watching the work sessions and everything else, nobody has discussed any of these lawsuits in the past and how they apply to this situation at hand. Oh, there's just a lawsuit, and that's all I've heard, But when you go in and you understand, you get in, why was the lawsuit first enacted? And everybody has their opinion, but when you read it, it says because there were 5 at-large members and there was no chance for minorities to get elected, so we came up with the plan to make 5 districts. I'm a big fan of this board, as you know. However, I don't think there's been discussions, laws at hand, lawsuits in past and present, lawsuits I cannot describe, nor the considerations of other options for accompanying the task at hand. And I have a problem. So, I've mentioned to you before that this is the same exact layout from 1992, okay? And I think it was Mr. Langley who asked about, was there a computer or something like that? Okay, so in 1990, there were 68,000 people in Harnett County. In 2000, there was 91,000. In 2010, there's 114,000. And today, we sit at 133,000 people. Essentially, we have doubled our population in the last 30 years, and we're still using the same maps from 1992. The population levels have shifted. When you look at the maps, actually, there was a DOJ memo to Mr. Snow in 2002, which described the African American population in the 50%. Now we're sitting here talking about it being in the 40%. The whole thing that I'm just saying is that while I'm emotional about this, I've provided more than enough evidence, data, information, and queries of a legal nature. It is imperative that what you do is best for the county in 2021, not 1992, and not 2030. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope I did a good job.
Thanks, Mr. Ferino.
I'll fill it out later.
Hello, Richard Chapman, 5220 Christian Light Road. Just a few random thoughts. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Schauer. He gave earlier an extremely competent and coherent explanation of how the map process went and what changes they made and why they made them. It was clear and it was understandable, and I appreciate his work and the energy that it went into creating all 6 versions of this map. So I think that was important. Secondly, we have District 1. We have a minority district. Yay! That's terrific. I'm really happy that for the next 10 years, we're likely to have a minority representative on this board. I think that's beneficial to the people of this county. It's beneficial to how this body acts and deliberates. I think it's wonderful that we have retained that. It has an effect on the other districts. And all you have to do is take a look at the map and see what a god-awful thing it looks like. There's no solution to that. In order to have a minority district, you have to have that squiggle in the center. And yeah, it looks like a salamander, but so what? And what it does to the other districts around it, I couldn't care less. I am so tired of hearing people feeling victimized by dark forces that somehow threaten their ability to be heard, when the reality is whatever your district looks like, it's up to you to get up off your butt and involve yourself in the politics and the issues that concern that particular district. That's your job as a citizen. And I'm tired of hearing people saying, well, this shape disenfranchises me and takes away from my rights. No, it doesn't happen. It doesn't work like that. So, yeah, they're not pretty, but I think we can make representative government work even with districts that aren't pretty. The differences between maps 5 and 6, I'm still confused about. I really have no idea. So however you're going to decide what they are, I don't know what they are. Maybe Mr. Schauer could give us a little brief capsulization again on what they were, but they all seem the same thing. And then the last point is what the school board has done. The school board is best described as a rogue body. They're in their own place. You guys are the adults in the room, and it's up to you to accept these maps, to adopt these maps, and to move forward. They're going to have to explain to their own consciences and their own voters and themselves why they do what they do. And quite honestly, I don't care. They need to conform with what you guys do. You guys are making the decision. So I wouldn't really worry about whether they conform to this map or not. It would be nice if they did, but if they haven't, oh well. And that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Gentlemen, Elizabeth Crudup again. It's good to hear from, well, I heard most of the public hearing, but hearing from the esteemed gentleman back there, daring to question why the African Americans, as he calls them, the blacks, need a minority district.
That's what the census calls it.
Because Black lives matter, damn it. The history of this nation cannot be erased just because the population changed. The reason the African American asked for a voice and a seat at the table is because they could not approach their non-white counterparts, or just say their Caucasian counterparts, and ask to be addressed with the same level that a Caucasian doing would be addressed. It wasn't the same. It's not the same today. It wasn't the same then. Today, though the population has changed, the addressing of African American issues by Caucasians in this county is still deficient. We asked this board, we knew this redrawal district were coming. We asked you guys to address that racial issue, to have the training, to do all that. You wouldn't. Here we are with the lines being drawn, and people doubt that the lines are being drawn, that the lines are being drawn equitably. I remember the last time we had these redistricting lines, I remember complaining because I do not have the heritage of being born and raised here, but I am an American now. But the history is like, why on earth? This is so weird. Why do we have a salamander? And to have grown women old enough to be my grandmother and great-grandmother sit me and look me in the face and say, Elizabeth, this is the only way. This is the only way. Why do we have the salamander? Because this is the only way we will not get tossed off of bridges with no police report. This is the only way we will get paved roads in our area. This is the only way we will get water and sewer. This is that map like that in this county is the only way. So don't question it again.
Ms. Crow,
please, thank you
calm
for
down.
having us. I cannot calm down when they say shut your voice. Don't have it. Go and stand with the Hispanics. That's what he just said. This is the only way. I had to look in Miss Bennett's eyes with all her dignity. Tell me, Elizabeth, this is the only way. Unfortunately for us, this is it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing no one else move, I will call this public hearing closed. At this time, I just want to thank everyone for your participation, your presence, your comments tonight. If I might take just a minute to briefly summarize some of this journey. As Mr. Schauer said, we really began in earnest on this process in October. I believe he also mentioned this is a process that in normal years would take or allow 6 or 7 months to work through. We have been challenged with working through this in at most 6 weeks, but probably more like 4 weeks. As I said earlier, I do appreciate his leadership in this. Obviously, the reason for the late start was the delay in receiving the census numbers. Truth be told, we still really don't have the final draft census numbers. What they've sent was to allow counties like us and groups that needed to redistrict to have something to go on, and that's proceeding across the nation, as he also mentioned. As I previously stated, it was both Chairman Jagger's with the Board of Education and my goal that we would be able to work together to create districts that were alike, so that we would eliminate some of the issues we have now with citizens who might be in one district for the Board of Education, another district for county commissioners, or vice versa. I think, as has been mentioned by Board of Education, Board of Elections, more different ballots having to be generated each election, more chance of human error for poll workers as they pass out these ballots. And so it certainly would have helped, in my opinion, had we been able to do that. But as you've already heard, this morning at the Board of Education meeting, since they are not held to the statutory requirement of November 17th, as this Board of Commissioners is, they decided to ask Mr. Schauer to continue to work and develop another phase for them. Since that has happened, it has become painfully obvious that we will probably not have districts that are the same between county commissioners and Board of Education. But that's not the end of the world. We've operated like that for the last 10 years, and if we need to do it for the next 10 years, then I guess we probably can. As Mr. Chapman did state, though, once we make our decision, it will be up to the Board of Education to decide if they want to align with that or whether they want to do something differently. Let me also say that I've heard the sentiments loud and clear last Monday at our public hearing about Phase 5, I believe it was at the time, that came out either late Friday or over the weekend, and we had a public hearing at our call meeting on Monday morning, and you as the public did not feel like you'd had an opportunity to look at those maps and give any feedback on those maps, and I will agree with that. I do have some angst about 6 coming out Thursday night. I think I got an email, or late Thursday afternoon on Veterans Day, got an email, and we got it on the website as quick as we could on Friday, but I think we're really in the same situation with Phase 6 today as we were with Phase 5 last week. Maybe we had a little more time to look at Phase 6. But with that being said, I cannot, in good conscience, support Phase 6 when I know, unless you were on the computer looking this weekend or here this morning, you have not had a chance to really look at Phase 6. And for that matter, I'm going to make a motion that we accept Phase 5 as was presented last Monday and has been available this week. And so I will make the motion that we adopt the Phase 5 County Commissioner District map and ask if there's a second.
Mr. Chairman, I share your same sentiments, and I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order. I'd like to ask the county attorney. I believe that we were also supposed to find a finding of substantial inequality.
Yes, on the resolution.
Yeah, that's next. Oh, okay. Excuse me.
Chris, you want to do that together?
It's all in one resolution. So it's the resolution of substantial equality you need to adopt.
Very good. Okay. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion in order to table this resolution. I think that we need more time. We need to gather some more info and data, and also with continued hopes to align with the school board.
And have a motion to table. Do we have a second? Have a second by Ms. McKoy. Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Vote table.
Ms. McKoy?
Wait a minute. What are the voting?
Motion to table.
Table, yes.
And chair votes no.
I vote no.
Yes.
Okay, motion has been tabled. So we will be in statutory defiance as of after Wednesday. So, Mr. Schauer.
Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Appel, I guess we'll work with you on that.
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
I would like to recommend that rather than adjourn our meeting tonight, that we recess it and that we reconvene on no later than the 17th at 9 a.m. to reconsider this matter.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to recess this meeting at the close of the agenda and reconvene at 9 a.m. on Wednesday the 17th to continue discussion on this matter. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, have a motion and a second. Ms. McKoy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Nickel?
Yes.
Mr. Witherspoon?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Okay. With that being said, before we enter into the, in that case, we'll put 9 on hold. And before we enter into the public hearings, we'll take a 10-minute recess. It is now 8:05. We'll reconvene at 8:15. We're now in recess.